time. What he really wants me to do is read it, make a few little comments, pat him on the head and say, you're good to go. I think he deserves more than that. So without telling him I'm taking you back to the beginning, I'm going to kind of take him back to the beginning because he thinks he needs something else. He needs to tell them everything about him. He needs to impress them. He's impressive. If all I had was a resume, if all I had was a list of activities and things he's done and experiences he's had, he's impressive. I don't need an essay for that. What I need is what I explain to him and I explain to every single student is they want to know who you are beyond what you've done. A hook is a red herring. A unique topic is a red herring. Some of the best, most effective essays I've read are about silly, boring things, except in those moments, I learned something meaningful about the student that I couldn't find out otherwise. And by meaningful, I don't mean unique. I had a student who wrote about, honest to God, climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. For real. I tell this story a lot. I think it's like one of the best examples I have of this. He went on this trip. Amazing. Mostly what I know is that his family is very wealthy and they could afford to go on this trip, but that's neither here nor there because that's also clear from his application, where he goes to school, the kinds of experiences he's had, all of that. So he's telling me he wants to write about this because it is the most impressive thing he's ever done. I said, so what do you want me to know? He says, I'll tell you, I almost summited. I mean, he was only focused on the accomplishment. I almost summited. And I said, so you didn't? And he said, well, I have asthma. What are you doing? You can hardly breathe up there. I have asthma. And at near the very end, the last day, the guide told me that I really shouldn't keep going, but I tried. And then I kept having to go back to our base camp. I said, I'm sorry, and I don't mean to be rude to you. That's pretty cool that you got to do that. But basically what I learned about you is that you did something that kind of seems foolish. Trying to do this and like going back a couple days after, trying to summit. I don't think it really shines you in a great light. And the fact that this happened on a mountain is not that impressive. If it happened in your grandmother's backyard, would it be equally impressive? And he said, well, of course not, because that's not an impressive place. The next year I worked with his sister. She also wanted to write about this mountain. This is the coolest thing their family has ever done, the most amazing thing they've ever done. Her story, however, was about staying back with another friend who was also on the trip, who was having a really hard time, and how she could have run up the last part of the mountain. She was doing great. She was very fit. She was ready to go. She didn't have asthma. And how she actually stayed with her friend and helped him so that he could also get to the top. And I said, if that had happened in your grandmother's backyard, that would be an amazing story, because that's a story about giving up her own glory and being the first one up and helping someone who needed it, who would not have been successful without her. That shares characteristics, whether she started with an amazing first line or not, whether that story had happened in a parking lot in her town or happened on a mountain. That story had a theme. What happened? I helped my friend when he was having trouble, even though I could have gone ahead without him. Why does it matter? Because I pay attention to what other people need. I don't always put myself first. And I'm motivation. I can motivate other people. That kid I want at my college, the kid who's going to climb up because even though he has asthma and just wants to get to the top, I'm a little worried about him. He may not make great decisions. So that's what I mean about theme. Theme matters more than the topic. And it's right here. The Common App instructions, not the 6 options other than topic of your choice. Say, what do you want readers of your application to know about you apart from courses, grades, and test scores? Choose the option that best helps you answer that question. So that's the real prompt. The rest of it, I've highlighted for you. What happened is the yellow. Why does it matter is the blue. It's right here in the questions. We'll take one of them as an example, break it down for you. Some students have a background, identity, interest, or talent. So it could be anything. A background is just as good as an identity. It's just as good as an interest. It's just as good as a talent. That is so meaningful. It matters to me. I mean, I've got all sorts of backgrounds and identities and interests that are like, whatever, but the ones that's so meaningful They believe their application would be incomplete without it. If this sounds like you, then please share your story. It doesn't say you have to share one story example. However, I will say from many, many, many years of working with students, 14 seasons in this business alone, it's easier to tell a story for most students. It's easier to have what we call an anchor moment, an anchor story. Those who are more sophisticated writers, the ones whose essays are more fun to read sometimes, can add lots of context, can add the before and the after, and what else does this mean? But for those who can't or won't, having an anchor story that illustrates a characteristic helps them stay in place, helps them fulfill what it is that they're trying to do, which is share something about themselves that demonstrates reflection. So again, I encourage you to think theme matters more than topic. And in order to get a theme, students have to understand the prompt. Second principle, reviewing is simple if you know what to look for. So we talk about, I'm going to look for a few examples. The thing I find, Kelly says, the thing I find hard is keeping the ones who hate writing motivated and involved. Phoebe says, it's hard for me to help students convert outlines into an essay draft. Arnell says, it's hard stressing the importance of taking time to craft essays. I'm going to say to Phoebe, let the outlines go. I'm going to explain to you why. And I will say that for those who hate writing, they love our exercises. You know why? Because we don't ask them to revise a lot. That doesn't make sense. How can they write if they don't revise? I love revision. I love, love, love revision. Here's what I mean by that. We take review, and I say this intentionally, review, not edit. Reviewing means looking at where you are in the process. And I'm going to show you all 10 steps in a minute. I have a reason for not having given this as an overview. Content comes first. You don't have to like to write to get content on the page. What happened? What am I talking about? Why does it matter? Why am I telling you this? If they can articulate it verbally and hopefully in writing, to some extent, it doesn't have to be beautiful, you know that they get it. That's the first thing you need to confirm, is that they understand what they're writing about and why. And it's not because you like the topic, or their sister said it was a great subject, you know, something to write about if they want to go to Duke, or their friend who goes to UC Berkeley said, this is what I wrote about in my PIQs and I got in. Content first, structure comes next. So the reason I tell you drop the outlines is let them write. And then we give them a writing exercise that helps them figure out what the structure should be. When they start with an outline, you are more likely to get something that will feel a little drier because they're thinking in structure first. I want them to let go of structure and think content first. And we have specific writing exercises. So we take our students through a 10-step process over 4 weeks. Like I said, some of you have done college essay experience. You have done it. It's the same process. The first week is all about content. The first week is just brainstorm and write your first draft. The second week is content exercises, getting outside the essay and thinking more about what am I writing about and why. The third week is second full draft and revision. We do that on purpose. Like I said, I'm a teacher, right? My background's in instructional design. I've taught writing for decades. I have taught engineers how to do things. I've done this in corporate world. I've done it in schools all over the place, not the college essay, but teaching in general. I need them in this case to step away from the essay and stop thinking essay and keep focused on my message. What's my theme? What's my topic? What am I writing about? Why? And in order to do that, I need them to step away from the essay. So the second week is writing exercises related to content, transitioning into structure. The third week is more what you'd recognize more as revision. But at that point, I have a lot of material. A lot. I have seen patterns. So those of you who say procrastinators make me want to jump out the window, stressed out parents, students who don't like to write, students who get distracted, all of these things, you can deal with it because you've identified patterns. I'm in my third week when I'm revising with them. I have learned if I give them pre-work before we have a first meeting, did they do it? Did they do it on time? Did I have to remind them? If I gave them an assignment after our meeting, did they do it? Did they do it on time? Did they do it thoroughly? Does it seem like they did it during physics class while they were also listening to music and sort of paying attention to the teacher? I can tell by this point because I've been working, and I don't meet my students before we work on their first essay. We consider the Common App the teaching essay. I'm teaching a student how to write this essay and how to think about essays overall. And I'm teaching myself what I can expect. The words we use here internally and with our colleagues when we do our training is willingness and ability. I am looking for what is the student willing to do and what are they able to do? And that gives me the framework to know what I can expect. Is this a kid who needs me to sit next to them, sit on them while they work? Because I won't do that. But is this a student who needs a tiny little nudge? Is this a student who's only going to do half-baked stuff? So I'm not going to give them 7 more assignments because they're not going to do them well and it's just going to stress them out. And only comment on what's relevant. So here are our 10 steps. I'm going to give you a link that will give you a PDF of this exact graphic when we're done. Step 1, all the green, step 1 through 6 is content. It's all content. Revision doesn't happen until steps 7 and 8. That's content plus structure. And steps 9 and 10 are marrying content, structure, and polish. By the time I get to a polish review, that student has written 3, 4, 5 drafts. I have learned what kind of comments they pay attention to and which ones they ignore. I have learned how far I can push them. I've learned what kind of writer they are. Is this a really creative kid? Is this a sophisticated thinker and writer? Is this one who's just going to do the bare minimum? Okay, I can deal with that. My ego is nowhere in this. It's not that I don't care. It's that I don't try to solve problems that are not college essay problems. Procrastination is not a college essay problem. I can deal with it with some college essay solutions. I can give a procrastinator different kinds of deadlines. Here's the deal with procrastinators. They're going to do it at the last minute, no matter what the last minute is. If the last minute is this afternoon or 3 weeks from now, they're going to do it at the last minute. If they're a severe procrastinator, they're going to tell me, oh yeah, I'll do it. And they'll miss every deadline. With those students, and I learned this, I'm paying attention in the first couple of weeks. I say to them, you know what? I did this yesterday. I'm stressing you out by reminding you so much. I'm going to stress you out. You seem kind of anxious about this anyway. When you're ready, send me your next exercise. And when I get it, I promise I'll always respond within a day, unless it's a deadline and I'm busy with too many students, and I'll let you know. I will always respond. Even if the response is, I'll get back to you tomorrow. Amazing. The student sent me her work that afternoon. I have another student, same situation. He sent it to me 3 weeks later. Okay, that's all he's going to do. I am not going to chase them. I am not their babysitter. I give them a schedule up front, which they have had input on, that we have discussed together, that the parent has had input on. It's not custom, it's a standard schedule, but it's where I say to them, this is what's due and when. You tell me if you can meet these deadlines or not. And sometimes they'll say, oh yeah, you know what? Band camp is that weekend. I'm not going to be able to do anything. Okay, we'll take that part off. We'll move things down. If they tell me they can meet the schedule, I remind them later that they said they could do it and now they're not. And we're going to have to figure it out. But knowing where you are in the process helps review, because if I'm up at the top, I'm in content, I'm commenting on content. If they don't take my suggestions, once I get to content plus structure, I can still make some suggestions. I recommend that you take this great free write that you did in step 6, and I think you need to use it here. Or this section is really, you're going on and on and on and on. It's not necessary. We already know that. I suggest you cut this in half, but I'm not going to edit it. And then this is again where I learn a lot. I get their response. So they cut that paragraph in half. They did it a little clumsily, but they did it. They added back in the content that I suggested they keep. Maybe it's a little clumsy, but they did it. So I can then help them. I can help them smooth it out. I can help them with a transition. I can help them and say, this is a run-on sentence. But what about the student that I give that comment to and they don't do it? I say, cut this in half and they don't. I say, add this back in and they don't. I don't need to tell them to do it again. I respect my students' editorial choices and I will tell them, it appears that you were not interested in these comments. That's okay. I just want to make sure it's not because you didn't see them or, you couldn't read them. That's important, right? Very important. And then when I get to polish, I'm done with content. I am done with structure. We've already had that conversation. Now I'm looking for commas and spelling and grammar and consistency. And are they using numbers or numerals in whatever way we've agreed? But I don't comment on those things earlier. My student's a terrible speller. I may mention, there's some squiggly red lines under some of these words. I would like you to at least check them before you send them to me, because that's sloppiness and a lack of respect sometimes. Or it could mean that they have dyslexia and they don't see it. I need to know that, right? I'm not going to assume anything. But often a lot of those issues work themselves out by the time we get to the last draft. Remarkably, if they read their work, often they see things that they might not have seen before. Kara wants to know, how viable is this for someone to do all of these steps for each student and do it well? If they are solely responsible for 70-ish students, impossible. But I will tell you what is possible with 70 students is to reframe how you spend your time. I do this with schools as well. I have done this with 200 kids in a high school auditorium, and then I go away. If all you do is get them through step 3, you help them understand the prompt. That's where kids make mistakes. They don't even know what it is. They don't know what they're doing. They've read all these samples. They're like, I'm going to go make one of those. It's like saying, I see a bunch of cakes. I'm going to go make one. You don't know that you first cream the sugar and the butter and you mix the flour and the baking powder separately and you put them together. And there's a different technique where you do it this way and you add the eggs, whatever. They're just trying to make a thing. They just have a bunch of stuff and they're trying to make a thing. If you have 70 students, help them understand the prompt. Help them understand how the essay fits into the application rather than reading endless drafts. Because I'll tell you, you talk about saving time, saving your sanity, making more money. It is really hard to edit your way, to revise your way out of a poorly conceived idea. I am an outstanding editor. I am a great coach. I will not edit my students' work. I don't do it. I'll edit Kim's work. I'll edit my team's work. I'll edit pages on my website. I have worked as a professional in the communications and marketing business. I'll edit anything for anyone who's an adult who's hiring me to do it. But this is a task, like it or not, students can do this. They can do this without us. Part of the problem is there's so much noise and confusion out there that it's really, really hard for them to do it well because they don't understand what it is they're doing. If all you do with 70 students is help them understand what this task is, help them understand what makes an effective topic, help them generate some topics, and then write a first draft, you're golden. If you have 70 students and you have to work with them through every single step, that's not possible. I can say that with all honesty. There are other things you can do as a private coach with 70 students. I don't want to be completely flip about it, but this is a lot. Now, it requires 4 to 6 hours of my time to work through these steps with a student, a first student. I can do it in about 4 hours of my time over 4 weeks. So if you have 4 hours over 4 weeks with 70 students after you've really learned this well, then you can do it. The other thing I've seen people do is learn our steps and then say, okay, I can do this. I can use this part. This part works for me and this part doesn't, but at least I understand in principle why I'm doing these early steps. We used to just do, we used to have workshops just on brainstorming and essay reviews separately. And what I found is that the essay review students needed coaching on brainstorming because their reviews were messy because the brainstorming hadn't been as streamlined as it should be. And the brainstorming students the students in the brainstorming class also needed help with essay reviews, because once they learned how to brainstorm better, their reviews didn't work anymore. So we said, all right, we're not doing that anymore. We don't separate it anymore. It all goes together. You have to know where you are in the process. With this approach, it takes the stress off my insatiable need to help my students. Well, this is important, actually. I think I wouldn't dismiss that. It's hard to let go. That's something I saw a lot. And here's where principle number 3 comes in. Every exercise, every meeting, every email has a purpose. So we use templates on purpose. We have templated messages. We do consistent exercises with our students. We like to say whether they need them or not, because it helps us stay focused. So what I said before was, if you think in terms of process, if you think in terms of principles, you can systematize what you do. And then you know when to make exceptions. If every student is an exception and everyone gets a custom program and this student needs 1 hour, but this student needs 10 hours, and all my students get 10 hours, but this one needs 20 hours, you don't have a process. That's not a process. That's operating by the seat of your pants. We've all done it. I mean, the way we got here is by doing it by the seat of our pants. And then I finally said, this is silly. I'm saying the same thing to every single student, no matter where they're applying. I'm going to make that one into a video. I'm going to turn that one into a web page. Oh, that exercise, I've got 20 content exercises, but these 2, I do these 2 with every single student. You know what? We're just going to do those 2 with every single student and test it and see what happens. And guess what? All those other variations, we didn't need them anymore. It doesn't mean there aren't other ways to approach the college essay. It means that this way works. And I get a lot of comments of, I am sleeping more, I am less stressed, I can talk to parents more easily. So yesterday, somebody who's in our college essay community membership program posted a question in our community forum. We have a discussion forum. And she said, I've got this student. Here's an example of her being able to lower the stakes and lower the heat for herself and also really help her students. She said, I have this student, and every time I give her an assignment, I get like a different thing. She keeps sending me these essays like they don't even look like the previous draft. And I'm trying and trying and trying. And I know that she's stressed. I know she's anxious. I don't know what to do. Like every time I give her advice, she goes in a different direction. Every time I give her specific comments, this is someone who's gone through our training, uses our process, has been in our community. I mean, she bought into the WOW method, right? And she's still like, I don't know what to do. And she said, I think it's a case. Remember, I used the words willingness and ability. She said, it's high willingness. She'll do anything. She'll try anything, but I think it's low ability. And I said to this IEC, you've got it. You have to listen to yourself. You have done your best work. Your best work as the professional has involved paying attention to this student, giving her exercises that work, modifying them as necessary as you went along. But you're like in step 8 now, and it's not getting better. And she'll keep going if you keep asking. So you have to decide, do you want to keep asking? Is it helping you? Is it helping her? You're just, at this point, she's starting to, she's getting desperate. What am I going to do? The essay, it's a mess. I said, you've identified it. High willingness, low ability. She can't do it. Stop asking. So at that point, I said, steps go out the window. Help her, we call it get them done. Just give her some very specific comments. Mark up a couple of lines. Tell her what's good about it. Give her some feedback on what works. There's got to be something that's positive. And send it back and then proofread it. And be finished. And send her mom a note that explains what you did, so that the parent understands, I know your daughter's anxious. We've gone through a lot of exercises together. I need her to be finished. Here's why this essay works. And she said, and a side note, she's not even getting into that school. I said, well, then don't stop. Don't waste your time. But the reason I say every exercise, meeting, and email has a purpose is you need to know why you're doing what you're doing. This IEC knew exactly why she was doing what she was doing, and then it wasn't working anymore, and she was getting stuck. And there's a problem, because then she's just spinning her wheels. Maybe if I ask a different question, maybe if I do it this way, maybe if I do it that way. Enough of that. Don't do that, because it's not helping the student. She'll just keep moving. Sam says, this sort of situation is why I implement a never delete policy with students in the drafting process, so they don't backslide and get rid of good material. Absolutely. So here's the thing. So what we do is we'll let our students work in Google Docs. They can work in whatever they want. I save every draft. I save it as a Word document because that's just what we use. We use Dropbox and we save things. So I can go back and see what they didn't include in the next draft. So absolutely. There's a comment here. Let's see. What do we have? Oh, Elaine says, but when you have a student that ends with weak writing, what do you say to a parent who expected a suitable essay? Aha. So that's a whole other session. I can give you an hour on that, on parent expectations. That's actually the parent journey is a topic that we talk a lot about. You have to tell the parent up front. We have a lot of communication up front. Here's how I work. Here's what we're doing. Here's how this is going to go. These are the steps I use. This is why I do it this way. And as we go along, I keep the parent updated. Jessica has had our first meeting. She seemed very anxious, but we did come up with a topic. I feel very strongly that this is going to help her, her application, because it demonstrates these qualities about her. I don't say anything about the writing. I don't say anything about the actual ostensible topic. So I am preparing the parent. As we go along, I'm updating them once a week. All good, having trouble, need your help, whatever. And at some point, I will say, if necessary, this essay works because, and I keep going, and you may notice that it rambles a little bit. She's more on topic than she was at the beginning. I don't want to keep pushing her. It's not going to help. I'm just going to stress your child out. It's not necessary. If it's just not strong writing, this has been interesting too. What you think is strong writing and what a parent thinks is strong writing sometimes doesn't match. What you think is excellent, a parent might think is weak. And what you think is weak, a parent might think is a jewel. So I usually wait till they say something. And I will say to them, can you show me an example of your student's writing that doesn't look like this? And they can't, because this is how the student writes. And I remind them, and again, this is in my early communications. Admissions officers are not looking for blow me out of the water essays. They just want some illustration of your child's voice, their story in their own words and their own voice, whatever that is. Average writers get to go to good colleges. I mean, look at all of us. You're not all like stellar communicators, right? Some of you would say, I can hardly put a sentence together. And yet you can be an outstanding writing coach. Easy. Because it's not about being the greatest writer, being the greatest editor. It's about knowing what you're looking for. It's about knowing when you're looking for it. It's knowing when to communicate with parents, when to get extra help, when to have an extra meeting, and when not to. So in the chat, please answer this question. What is one thing you can apply starting right now? What can you do with all the stuff that I've been talking about with you? What are you going to do with it? How are you going to use it? What is one thing you can apply starting right now?
Unknown caller. Hello.
One thing you can do right now. Okay, I'm going to share a few of these. Communicating the writing expectations up front with parents. Templates. I already use these for group classes and create regimented assignments, but for individual students, I err on the side of overly flexible. Absolutely. And in fact, for those who asked about how do I do this with a lot of students, we have a 4-hour curriculum, and it covers those first several steps, because that's really all you can do with a group. And then you can send the students off to work on their own and figure out how much time you can spend with them individually. Joyce says, I'm going to save all the drafts. Hillary says, apply the suggested order of operations. Kara, have the students focus on theme over just getting a draft written to start with. That will change your life. It seems like you're slowing down. I am telling you, like, that's what I asked the student. I said, this beautiful musician, amazing, brilliant kid. I said, well, what exactly would you like me to remember about you when I'm done reading this? If he can't articulate it, I'm not commenting on the essay. I need him to know. I can help him figure it out. I'll talk to him. I'll sit on the phone with him for an hour, but I'm not commenting on his essay unless he can tell me what I should be looking for. In fact, that's what we tell our students. If you're going to show your essay to anyone, your mom, your sister, your English teacher, whoever, give them the topic. Tell them which question you answered, whether it's a personal statement, a PIQ, a supplement, doesn't matter. And your theme. Tell your reader, here's what I'm trying to convey. Did I do it? Do not tell me that you don't like my first sentence. I didn't ask you that. I asked you, I am trying to show that I'm very responsible and I'm a good problem solver. Do you get that from this essay? That's all I want you to tell me. Because students just hand work to people and say, hey, is this good? I taught my kids this when they were in high school. Don't just give me your paper. Give me the assignment. How do I know if you did it right? This is the same thing, same principle. Okay. What else are you going to be able to do? Share timeline and expectations. Mary says, have clear expectations with students and parents. Jennifer says, not push students to go beyond their capabilities. Absolutely. They know what they can handle. This isn't news to them. And if you push and push and push, it just feeds into their anxiety. Doreen says, stop stressing over writer's ability that will not change. It's hard, I know. Carissa, pointing out to the parents the good at the end, regardless of what I or they think of the final essay. Absolutely. We really want our students to feel strong. I want them to go through senior year knowing that their application is good work and that they are capable. Love the review, not edit is the correct language to keep my role clear. Today I'm printing the steps and taping them to my wall behind my monitor so that while I am in a meeting, I can see the steps over the monitor, reminding me not to jump, stick to the plan. Don't push, guide. Thank you, Margaret. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Don't push, guide. You are a guide. You are a coach. Like I said, students really should be able to answer these questions. They're not that hard. But there's so much noise out there and it's so competitive and it's so stressful. So help them simplify it. Turn the heat down. I say anything I'm doing that turns the heat up, I'm not doing my job. My job is to turn the heat down. Everyone else around them is making that pot boil hotter and hotter and hotter. I want to remind them that they're qualified, that they're good enough, their stories are good enough. Phoebe, I would double check that what happened and why it mattered to my students. Good. Sam says, this sort of situation is why I implement and never delete. Oh, that was while I was talking. Okay, we're not going to do that one. Helen says, having students step back and really think about theme and why they want to write what they are writing. What do they want the reader to know? I think the kids often get too caught up in the story and less on why it's important. Absolutely. One of the things we tell them up front, so every one of our exercises has a short video. It has a web page with information and then what we call a try it writing exercise. And those repeat, and the information in them repeats. So I know they scan. I know I can't count on them doing all of it, but I know that if I repeat my instructions and my main information, so we tell them, think about this story. If you were telling it to your mother, there's a different reason than if you were telling it to your best friend or if you were telling it to an admissions officer. So remember your audience. Remember your audience. Why are you telling the story? Linda says, I'm going to save all the drafts. I've been naming revisions and revision history. I just learned to do that. And I have found that with so many students, that one tip has been very helpful. Absolutely. Folders, naming conventions, revision names, calling things by draft. And Lauren says, don't edit for them. Stephen says, help students and parents relax about being impressive or some kind of superhuman. Admissions officers aren't expecting Arctic explorers to be applying to their schools en masse. Thank you. Average writers get to go to great colleges, hit home. Good. This is great. So I'm going to show you one more slide. And while I am doing this, we have a few more minutes. Post your questions in the chat. What else do you want to know? So this is where you get free stuff. And this is where you get a discount. on our website. This is so easy. You do not need to go there right now. Just remember, it's whilewritingworkshop.com/CounselMore. I think you can remember that. I mean, you can copy the link if you want, but it's simple, simple, simple. And if you forget, you can ask Margaret or Mark, or you can send me an email, whilewritingworkshop.com/CounselMore. There's a link to our book. There's a link to the 10 steps. And there's a $300 coupon on our top-notch training, our best training, the most amazing training. People say, have you done the WOW training? This is what they're talking about. It's usually $12.50. You can get it for $9.50 with this coupon. It is a CounselMore special coupon, CM300, CounselMore 300. That's for you. I am going to stop screen sharing for a moment. And I will, oh, thanks, Mark. Mark just put the link in the chat. I'm going to stop screen sharing so you can just see me and not the slides. And I want your questions. Put your questions in the chat. We have 5 minutes. How fast can I answer some questions? Heidi says, what would be an assignment that you would give a group before the first meeting? Ah, so good. Okay, here's what I would give a group before the first meeting. And I would even repeat it a little bit during the meeting. I would give them the equivalent of steps 1 and 2. So I would make them a little video of you. You don't need great production values. You should see our videos. They're really old. They're really embarrassing. I'm wearing a lot of red lipstick. And every so often we're like, we should redo the videos. We're like, well, it's because we don't like them. It's not because they're not good. I would do the same script. I would just look different, right? So what I would do would make a very brief video and a page of information for those who like to read that explains what the college essay is and why they're writing it. And then I would give them a 3-question assignment. Those of you who have done college essay experience have done this assignment. Question number 1. What is the role of the Common App essay? I do this as a Common App exercise, by the way, because like I said, it's the best essay to teach them how to think about essays. I very rarely find a student who doesn't need one. And if they write one and they don't need it, they can use it for something else. They can use it for MIT. They can use it for Georgetown. They can use it they can turn it into a UCPIQ. So my first question is, you have to make sure that in your video and in your page, you've given them the answers, okay? Don't just ask them these questions. What is the purpose of the Common App essay? If they give you answers like to show how unique you are, to show how special you are, you know that they don't get it. And you need to address that in your group session. If they say things that reflect those instructions, what do you want readers to know beyond grades and scores and da-da-da-da-da-da? You know that they got it, okay? So question number 1 on the worksheet is, what's the purpose of the Common App personal statement? Question 2 is, what do readers already know about you? And I give them examples. I play in the band, I babysit, I live in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, whatever, doesn't matter. What do they already know? Why do I say that? Because they forget, like my student from this morning. See, I will have to thank him for giving me such a good example to share with you all. They forget that the essay doesn't jump over a fence and walk into the admissions office, or forget, they don't even know it. It doesn't walk into the admissions office by itself. It is part of an application package. There's a lot of information. There's a lot of data in that package. Readers already know a lot about them. I don't need to tell them again that I'm the top archery player in my district. I might write an essay where something happens in what is it, an archery field? I don't even know what it's called. Sometimes the examples I come up with just surprise even me. I don't have to tell them that I play the sport. I don't have to tell them that I have this job. I have to tell them who I am in that role. So I'm reminding them. The second question is, what do they already know? And then the third question is, what would you like them to know about you? And then this is where I distinguish and I say, characteristics, these are the words, characteristics, not accomplishments. I don't say, what do I want them? I want them to know I'm an all-star baker. Well, there's lots of places you can put that information if you need to. I want them to know I'm a problem solver. I want them to know I can make a decision under pressure. And in the reading and the video I've given them before this exercise, I've taught them that. Now I can't make them read it. My triad exercise is to check understanding here. Those of you who are teachers, who've ever been teachers, this is a checking understanding exercise. It is not looking for the perfect traits that they're going to write about later. It doesn't matter what they write as the answers if they understand the concept. The difference between an accomplishment, what I've done, and a characteristic, who I am. So that when we get to topics in this lovely group session you're going to do, you can say, this can be a great topic and this can be a great topic because if I tell this story, it shows this about me. If I tell this story, it shows that about me. So you're repeating, think like a teacher, you're repeating concepts, you're using language. You're going to keep going back to it later. Oh, Elaine says, don't edit. What do you call grammar support? I don't call it editing. I will say, you need a comma here in the margin. I will take one sentence and I will change the verb tense. And I'll say, this used to be in past tense, but the rest of your essay is in present tense. I'd like you to go through and find other past tense sections. This slows things down. It's okay. And I will ask them to do it. If at the end, if they try really hard, if they've gotten most of the commas right and most of the verbs right in my final polish, yes, I will make those last couple of changes, but I will not rewrite sentences. I don't do it. You can do it. It's absolutely fine. You can do it. I'm not judging. I'm saying we don't. And then we have a proofreader at the very, very, very end who's just making sure we didn't miss anything. Because really, some of our coaches are better proofreaders than others. Some of us are amazing at it, and some of us are only good at it. So I want one more set of eyes. But if there's a sentence that says, the reason I fell down was because I X, and I know that it's a better sentence to say, I fell down because of X, I might mark it, and I might not. It doesn't matter. I might mark it if they need to get to cut words. I'll say, you're saying what you could say in 5 words and 10 words. But if they don't need to cut words, I might leave it alone because they're 17 and it doesn't matter. Honest to God, it doesn't matter. I've asked admissions officers, they say, what do you think? I'm sitting there with a red pen, marking it up. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for insight. I'm looking for reflection. And if they're applying to a really selective school and they don't have the writing skills to succeed there, it's not my job to pretend that they do. I feel very strongly about that. I won't leave a mess. Well, unless the kid won't finish, in which case, what can you do? Anyway, it has been such a pleasure to be here with you today. Thank you so much for participating, for answering my questions, for listening. And like I said, I invite you to get in touch if you have additional questions. Please go to our page, get your free book, get your free 10 steps, get your discount on our training. And thanks, CounselMore, for having me.
Thank you so much, Susan, for coming. I took copious notes. I think Margaret has written another Old Testament based on the messages we've been sending each other. So again, if anyone has any questions about getting the nice gift that Susan was kind enough to give us, I'm putting the link in the chat again. Susan has been nice enough to allow us to reach out to her. If we have questions, feel free to do that. I attended one of these, I think 2 years ago, and true to her word, I emailed her and she got back to me and it was really cool. She's very reliable and nice. But thanks again for coming, Susan. Feel free to go on the CounselMore page under training and community events to register for our next event. We're going to have a great speaker as well. And this has just been wonderful. Thanks again, Susan. Take care, everyone. I'm going to end the call and we look forward to seeing you next month.